The name, but in the upper right, in the blue, playing for, well, Platinum Esports, his name, Goblin.
And down here in the bottom left-hand corner, we're looking inside of the main base of PtitDrogo. Showing some impressive StarCraft 2 earlier on already in this particular tournament. He, I believe, only spends a little bit of time playing StarCraft these days. I believe he's going to school these days. I believe he tweeted at least about being accepted, I believe, to some sort of course. Anyways, long story short, we haven't really seen Drogo play for a good couple months, and then he decided, well, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and give a try and see if maybe I can qualify for this particular event. And it turns out, yeah, he certainly still has it. Goblin may be a little bit more active overall, couple more tournament games played by him over the last few months, but also not quite as many.
It's weird when we talk about this as well, where I swear, Loco, there's a retirement buff. You see so many players. Moss is another good example. Neeb, when he was like semi-retired, the same thing when he announced he was going to go to school in the fall, where these players, they retire and they say, look, I'm not playing StarCraft anymore. You know, I might try to do something, but I'm not doing this full time. I'm going to go and pursue my studies. I'm going to do whatever it is. And then they go and they level up their performance for a while. They actually start playing better, and they just do better than when they were doing it full time. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the lack of pressure, but
yeah. I think that's absolutely it. When you try and do this full time, as we do have a cheeky little pylon over here at the bottom of Solaris, Goblin probably going to go for a proxy Stargate here, but as you're playing a game full time, you're obviously also trying to justify it to yourself, right? So you put all this pressure on yourself. You're like, hey, I want to win a premier tournament one day. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I guess when you announce your retirement, all of that gets thrown out of the window, and suddenly the sky becomes the limit once again. And we've seen very successful players also use that as almost like a strategy over the years, right? I think back of the Stefano days, back when he was really on top of the game. He pretty much always said he never practiced and he didn't really care that much, but I can guarantee you he certainly did practice and he certainly did care. But we always had that like semi-retirement just to take the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, you know, if you go and party until about 5 o'clock in the morning and show up to the studio with a massive hangover, you're going to win the entire tournament. That's how that works. that just might be Home Story Cup.
Maybe, yeah, that could just be the Home Story Cups. Anyways, we've got a Stargate for both players. However, Goblins is all the way on the other side of the map, very close to the opponent's main base. Drogo, however, also has a Stargate of his own. If he can see this Stargate here at the bottom, or maybe see the lack of a structure in the opponent's main base, there's certainly a chance that he can almost hard counter this, right? But for now, Goblin's build will be unscouted.
Yeah, and he's got a couple of depths on the other side. Now, there's nothing here to block this out, but 3 Stalkers say, nah, don't do that. Don't go up on the high ground. That's not a good idea. So, behind this, Robo on the way as well. So, Stargate into Robo off of 1 base. But he seems like he's got some idea what's happening. It's not a well-placed shield battery. But it is.
I think he's mostly just using this for base defense if the opponent decides to get aggressive. Is Goblin gonna save up oracles? Oh, he's such a greedy boy. No, he's... Okay, yeah, he's actually turning around. I thought he just had it rallied over there and he was going to commit, but he actually wants to go in until he has to.
Yeah, I mean, I like this. If you're gonna find value, 2 is far more than 1. Although, I mean, realistically, with no shield battery in the mineral line, he could have gotten a ton of value with even just that first Oracle. And now the Oracle's out for Drogo. He's got an Immortal on the way behind this. Goblin does seem to be getting ready for a natural. But I mean, this 1 base aggression coming out of Drogo is weird. You don't see it happen like this all that often. A depth will fall. This is Goblin's opportunity, but he's not diving in yet.
How many are we going to save up, Goblin? Okay, I was going to say any more than 2 does not really make any sense whatsoever. And this is a wide open base. And obviously with 2 of them, if you target properly and everything's in sync, you're going to be able to get a lot of damage done. A little bit of misfiring, but that's still a ton of probes here falling. And obviously those oracles, they're going to be able to come back in for more just a moment later. In the meantime, good deflection as well at home right here by Goblin. Drogo not really getting any work done.
No, not really. Now, it does feel like Drogo has to make something happen. He doesn't have a natural. I mean, it's only just now getting started. Goblin's had his up for much longer. He does have that faster Robo. Maybe that's something. But Drogo taking that much damage and his natural being delayed, it does feel like he's got to get something done here. But with how big Solaris is and considering all of his productions in the main base, I don't know how much he's going to be able to really accomplish.
No, I don't think you're going to be able to do a whole lot here as a Drogo in general. You just want to kind of continue playing the game ever so slightly from behind. He does have an Immortal coming up right now as well, so that's quite nice. Goblin right now has an Immortal coming up. Drogo already has his done, which is quite nice for him. Those Immortals are very important in this particular matchup, so I wouldn't mind seeing him double down on that. He does indeed start up a second one here too, so maybe that's the edge that he's got. But economically speaking, Drogo certainly is a little bit behind.
Yeah, that he is not. And I love what we saw from Goblin as well, understanding that, okay, there are Oracles on the field. Drogo is probably going to be pressured to get some damage done, so maybe that's the second Oracle. Just get a Phoenix, right? It's only one. It's not that big of an investment, and now this pressure from Drogo, it's got a timing. If he wants
Goblin's
to dive
going
into a
back in,
mineral
by the
line,
way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's going back in on the other side of the map, trying to get some damage done, but looks like maybe he just got a single worker there, or at the very least the Stalkers managed to deflect it.
Yeah, certainly. So, well, the Phoenix, again, just really powerful. And if Goblin decides to attack, he's got two Immortals that he can kind of lift one of them and make something happen. But yeah, Loco, I mean, we are on 2 bases now. We have stabilized in some way, shape, or form. Goblin, though, his advantage now, it's got to be for the Twilight. As the Oracles, again, they're not going to get much here. Missed target fire. That could have been so much more. Instead, it's only 2 workers and 2 dead Oracles. Yes!
He can cancel that Phoenix now, and he does. Yeah, he cancels the Phoenix. He was actually listening to your advice there. He decides to go into the Immortal there instead, because he already killed those Oracles. Lovely work there overall by Drogo, but certainly a little sloppy by Goblin. And we saw the same thing happening in the main base earlier. Ultimately, he ended up killing 11 probes, which is certainly nice, but I think it could have been closer to 15 here, right? We saw so many of those units just at half hit points, and obviously those shields, they will regenerate.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the game hasn't quite stabilized. Again, the economy is not great, but at least Drogo feels safe. He feels that he can go and make something happen. He has Oracles on the other side. They get a couple workers, and they're going to try to kill that third. But again, that Phoenix is out. This is not a Zerg hatchery. This is not something like that. You get your HP a little bit faster. So not going to make that happen. Baiting the Phoenix into the shots. Not enough Stalkers. But here comes pressure. This is a decent sentry count coming out of Drogo.
Absolutely. He's got 3 Immortals here as well right now. So Drogo is going to be able to make short work of all of those units on the ground. It's going to be mostly Stalkers here for Goblin. Blink is going to finish up in about half a minute or so right now for the Protals in blue. A couple Stasis Wards here set up as well, which I do quite like, but you got to be careful here for sure. This can still go south very easily here for Goblin, despite the fact that he does have that supply advantage and, well, the economical lead.
That being said, though, it's not an army supply lead, 64 to 47, and Drogo effectively has Blink, at least for some of his units, with the Warp Prism if he decides to run that forward. So Blink's done in 8 seconds, and Drogo just wants to go right now. Goblin, though, kind of ready. This is a beautiful concave, and shield batteries as well, Loco. That makes it really hard for Drogo to pressure. So instead, he's going to be okay. He cancels the third base, and I can't imagine he's going to do too much more than that. The extra Phoenix, though, is making it hard to keep this Warp Prism where he wants it to be.
Yeah, this is do or die though for Drogo. He hasn't really been making any probes for quite a while, so he's planning on obtaining the victory with his army that he's got right now, setting up some stasis wards over here, trying to prevent some of those blinks. I mean, battery overcharge has been triggered right now by Goblin, trying his very best. One of the Immortals here in blue desperately tries to stay alive, soaking up a lot of shields, but not really happening. But those Phoenixes are denying those Immortals for a long time.
Yeah, that they are. Well, it's a bunch of Adepts. They don't fight incredibly well. One Immortal's going to fall. Second one should die. Well, actually, no, it's going to have Heart and Shield once again. Good timing on that one. And now it does feel like Drogo is starting to punch through a little bit. Still up 12 army supply. And these Adepts, if they are able to break through, suddenly you're going to have Adepts in every mineral line. Economic damage, massive. But now we're going to start to see this Phoenix count that Goblin's been making from the other side of the map. Gets one Immortal, gets the second one. And now as this fight starts to peter off a little bit here, we start to ask our question, did Drogo get enough done? And for my money, it's only 3 dead probes. Goblin is handling this beautifully.
Absolutely not. Keep in mind that Goblin did end up canceling his third base there, so he did snap decision that one to not let it finish. He would have probably bought himself a bit of time, but I don't think he would have been able to keep that Nexus alive. He never took the bait here either, right? Which is really important. Those Stalkers never really being taken out of the equation here. Drogo decides to recall and go back home, but that's gonna come at the cost of quite a few more units. A nice hold right there by Goblin. That certainly looked really, really tricky there for him, but I think those Phoenixes honestly were the MVPs, just denying those Immortals for such a long time.
And the presence of mind there to say, yeah, you know what, my Stargate's on the other side. Normally I wouldn't do much, but let me just crank Phoenix out. It's going to be so good against what my opponent has. It's just really smart gameplay coming out of Goblin. Now, there are Adepts in his base on the other side from the Warp Prism, but unfortunately, that just means that Drogo has nothing to keep himself safe. So a bunch of Blink Stalkers and Phoenix means that, yeah, he's going to lose, Goblin's going to lose 11 probes, maybe some more. He's going to lose everything, and Drogo is dead. Goblin, beautiful play in game 1.
Yeah, excellent work right there by Goblin. Maybe not too happy with himself because of the misfires on that Oracle. He's, you know, StarCraft players, at least that I know, they tend to be very critical on their own performance, but ultimately he played better right here than Drogo. I mean, that really looked scary, but the defensive position in this matchup is so nice, right? When you get those shield batteries in and you get to warp in basically within the battle. I mean, even with the Warp Prism being close by, oftentimes you can still warp in a little bit more aggressively as the defender, and ultimately he ended up coming ahead, only ever so slightly though. And I think in his mind, if he would have killed like 5 additional workers like we were talking about with those oracles, I mean, he already got a lot of damage done, but if he would have done even more, like he could have, if he had perfect targeting there, I think that fight would have looked a whole lot better there for Goblin.
Oh, I definitely. And you look at that as well. It's tempting to look at that fight starting. You're like, wow, you know, Drogo's up 25 army supply or 20, whatever it was. And it's like, oh, wow, this is a powerful army. It was an extra 20 supply of Adepts. Adepts they can be beefy in the early game, and they can sit there. I mean, Adepts against Stalkers and Immortals are not the best units. They're loco. They don't do a ton of damage. No. And so even as Drogo was able to make that fight happen and started to try to push in, cancels the third base, the quality of that army was just not where it needed to be. It certainly did not represent the supply that he had. So Goblin takes game 1, and now what this means is we're about ready to get into game 2. It means that Goblin needs to win this game or he's out of the tournament. So, Loco, game 2.
Harstem, Loco, all those Europeans are basically the same, BO. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you're a European Zerg whose name starts with L. What am I going to do?
You know what? You're not the only one. I have had this happen many times before, and yeah, as a bit of a Lambo fanboy myself, I will take that as a compliment. Absolutely.
Fair enough. But in the bottom right, he's back now against the wall in game 2. It's Drogo.
Up in the top left-hand corner here of Oceanborn, winning the first game of this best-of-3 series, it's Goblin. The winner of this match moving on to the 5th round of our Swiss format, meaning that he's got another shot at, well, moving on to the next stage of this tournament. There's a lot of games going on, there's a lot of games being played, and, well, in case you've only just now tuned in for the first time today, there's gonna be a lot more games as well over the next few weeks. I'm not exactly sure when everything wraps up, but just hit the follow button, guys. You'll be notified. There will be tons of StarCraft.
Yep, it is not this weekend. It is not the following weekend because that's first round of playoffs, but it is the weekend after that, which is mid-November. I don't remember the days, but we have, after today and tomorrow, we have 2 more weekends of StarCraft, and then the best part about next weekend, Loco, not Lambo, is that Jesus, now stuck in my head.
You've got yourself tricked, man.
Is
now you gotta pay too much attention to it, and it's just gonna go worse.
Oh no! But we moved to best of 5s, so we get to get funky veto setups. We get to see more of the new maps, and we get to see more games out of these players. So that's exciting. But not for now. It's just best of 3s.
You know what? It is all good. Mispronunciations have been kind of our thing over the last couple of streams. It's been spiraling out of control a little bit. It all started, I believe, with Heartlet and Heartlead and Alcyone and Alcy1 and Equilibrium, and there's too many complex words these days. I can be added to the list.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's the old thing. You know, why use many word when few word do tricks?
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful defense, though, there by Goblin in that first game of the series, right? He really did handle that very nicely. I think canceling the Nexus was actually the key, because I was wondering if he should have canceled it there blindly himself. So he decided to cancel it when it was like 98% of the way done, when the opponent marched down the ramp, and he made the snap decision to spend those resources on additional units instead. And I think if he wouldn't have had those resources, that fight would have been, well, it was already very close. It may have even tipped in favor there of Drogo. Either way, we will never know. It's going to be a Stargate opener once again here for Goblin. And, well, this time around it's inside of his main base. We've got ourselves an hallucinated Phoenix, though, already flying across the map here for the Frenchman.
Yeah, Yeah, that's going to be nice, just getting that scout off early as possible. Although, going back to that game one more second here, Loco, I don't think we should be surprised. We talked about how brilliant that Phoenix play was. We really shouldn't be that surprised because Goblin, now he's stabilized. He plays more styles, but what was he known for like years? He was the Phoenix guy. So it doesn't surprise me that his first idea to go and, like, when you're in an awkward situation, you have the Stargate, get the Phoenix play, make that happen. We're not there yet. It's an Oracle in game 2, and how many does he go for? He went for 2 last time. He got a lot of damage. But for right now, Twilight first, or Twilight immediately afterwards.
Absolutely. He does fire up another one. I think having 2 Oracles is always nice in this matchup. Twilight Council though on the back of this as well, so he's not just gonna stick around on this ground, or sorry, on this airbase army for all too much longer, just using them as an harassment tool here to try and slow down the economy right here of Drogo. Drogo now finished up his own Nexus here. Stalkers are getting in position. It looks like once again Goblin is gonna wait. He's gonna wait until he gets the second Oracle.
Yeah, and you know, I thought he had an opportunity. The depths were pretty much uncontested getting through this gap, and Stalkers would have reacted, and then you were able to dive maybe in the natural. But I guess Goblin just doesn't want to lose Adepts early on, or early game units are really, really impactful. But Adepts, now they're going to shade in, and this time, well, there's less for them to get because, well, they didn't take the opportunity early on. So Oracle tries to dive in, doesn't get much done. Adepts don't get much either. And that last shade timing, I think, was going to be far more impactful. Look at this, Drogo. Stalkers on the map, gets damage on the Oracle before it even finds its way in. He's handling this a lot better this game.
Yep. I think by now in the previous game, he ended up losing quite a few of his units already. It's going to be a proxy gateway here on the left side of the map as well for Drogo. So maybe he's going to try and leverage this much better defense in game number 2 of the series into a much nicer offense as well. Twilight Council as well, though. So he's not just going to stick around on unupgraded Stalkers for now. I think these Oracles, I was going to say, they can now activate their pulsar lasers over here and maybe get a few kills. Nothing really to write home about, but in the meantime, Drogo's on the other side of the map, and he's ready to attack.
Yeah, those damage from early on really made those Oracles not great, and now with Guardian Shield popped here, he's just gonna run on top. Shield batteries, they're not ready yet. Probes are gonna get pulled, but the force fields there, Loco, are so nice, and all this damage that Goblin tried to get on the Oracles, I mean, it is returned in spades. 10 dead probes, and yeah, the Sentry Guardian Shield is running out. The force field energy is running out as well here, so Drogo should back up. But he's going to keep committing, and he's got another warp in, but he's losing the Stalker fight for now.
Yeah, that battery overcharge there, maybe a little late, but all things considered, still very handy. 12 probes, though, were killed in the meantime as well. Goblin going to town, trying to just shut down whatever he can. Yeah, 12 probes on the other side of the map, 3 right over here for the player in red.
And Loco, the wild thing is that as we stabilize for a second, Drogo runs back home, Goblin defends, he gets damage. We're totally equal on workers, totally equal on economy, and Goblin just has his blink faster. So I guess Drogo really, he cut a significant number of probes to make that attack happen, and at that point, instead of winning the game or building himself a really significant advantage, if anything, he's actually just a little bit behind off it. His tech is behind, his economy is just the same. And hey, Goblin's got a Dark Shrine as well, or on the way.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little tech lead right here for Goblin for sure, right? So that upgrade is a little bit faster, and he also does have the quicker Dark Shrine here, which is going to be very handy for him. He's going to be able to find this gateway too and shut it down, which is always helpful too if you're concerned about, for example, a couple of depth shading in. We see that all the time in his matchup, even in the mid game. A couple of depths can do a lot of damage on the other side of the map, but this is still one of those games where it can be flipped upside down very easily. Goblin's still slightly ahead, but really nothing to really write home about.
Yeah, not really. And hey, this is PvP. And as we start to get ready to take our third bases, as Blink is done, we're not going to see too much happening for the next 5 minutes or so. Not until maybe the 4th base, generally. Now, Drogo is an aggressive Protoss, and he may decide to make something happen. But on Oceanborn, with the ramps as they are, we're going to stable, I think, for a moment, but as I say that, Drogo, he's getting ready to move out.
Yeah. He's got to be careful because there are Dark Templar as well moving on the right side of the map, so Goblin ready to go in for some counterattack damage, if I'm not mistaken. There they are. The Invisible Men. Not all heroes wear capes, but these do, Bio.
That they do, but Drogo, he's getting hit right before those Invisible Men show up, so pressure on. He's got a lot more Stalkers. Blinks forward on this Stasis Trap just to trigger that off. Second one, though, gets half the army even still. Drogo just blinks on top. Shield battery overcharge is done. Now DTs are in the main base. They're starting to get damage done here, so Drogo has to find so much value. And because he blinks on top with half of his army is stasis,
GG.
he's just